Hey guys, it's Penguin here, and welcome back to another gold making video. This video is going to be dedicated to all of my new gold makers out there, so whether you're just getting back into gold making in Dragonflight, or you're just new to the scene in general, this video is going to be for you. One of the biggest questions that I get right now in Dragonflight is, hey Penguin, I'm just starting to make gold, I don't have any knowledge points, what can I sell? And that is exactly what I'm going to try to cover in today's video. So with that being said, if you are currently a gold maker and have some pretty good Dragonflight experience, I will just say this will probably not be a video for you. You likely will have all of these markets already covered, but if you hang around, watch the video, I would really appreciate it. But without further ado, we're going to jump right into it, and thank you so much for watching. And before we go straight into items, I do want to lay down a few ground rules that I think are very important to discuss. And the first thing I really just want to point out is that you need to be consistent. What I mean by this is that some of the items I'm going to be showing you are server side, meaning that each realm has a different price, while other ones will be region wide, meaning the whole NA region shares the same price, and then of course the same thing for EU. Whichever the market is, whether it's region wide or server side, prices change all of the time. I will throw a screenshot of what I'm looking at right now at recording, and I just picked up a popular item called Salad on the Side. It's a region-wide cooking item, and the chart that you see, the blue, is the price. So if you guys kind of see the humps at the very end, currently at the time of checking the price, it is 9 gold. But if we go to the first dip, or the last dip that has occurred, that was at 4 a.m. this morning, and it dipped down to 6 gold. It stayed at that price for about 4 hours, and then at about 9 a.m. it recovered back to 9 gold, and you can just kind of see the ups and downs with this item, especially literally in the last 24 hours. So what I'm basically saying is that the prices in markets change literally by the minute, by the hour, and by the day. So when you watch this video, I will be taking screenshots and showing you guys profit margins of whenever I'm editing this video. And so, if you go and check your server or check the region market, you will see probably different prices. Sometimes the item might be more expensive, sometimes the item might be cheaper, the prices of materials are going to change, and that basically just means that items won't always be profitable. Actually, one of the items I'm mentioning on this list I still recommend, but technically it's actually unprofitable for me at the time of recording. So yes, these are good items, but if you just check and deem it unprofitable, don't forget about it. Check back every few hours, check back every few days, even give it a week, but always be consistent and check prices. Secondly, on top of being consistent, you also want to be persistent. Starting professions, especially right now in Dragonflight, can be very, very daunting. If anybody is feeling like that, that is okay. But the best thing that you can continue to do is slowly gain your knowledge points. So go out there, collect your treasures, start doing your weeklies, at least the weekly quest every single week. If you don't have time to do treasures, that's okay, but at least start gaining knowledge points over time. And that is going to help you in the future, right? Even if you have no idea what you want to spend those points on, just collecting them is going to save you a ton of time once you do. Then lastly, just for the sake of this video, I am assuming that you have some of the basics covered. What I mean by that is that you've leveled up your professions at least a little bit. You're probably around a level 50 in each and every profession. You have some basic green tools, stuff like that, the basics of Dragonflight professions. If you don't, I have plenty of videos covering those topics, but with all of that being said, there's some ground rules, things to think about, and let's dive in to these markets. And so to get started, feel free to use the timestamps on the timeline to skip to whatever profession you're interested in, but the first market I want to highlight is for a range of professions, and this is all armor professions, including Inscription. So that includes Blacksmithing, Tailoring, Inscription, Jewelcrafting, as well as Leatherworking. And this market is probably one of my favorites. I talk about it a lot, but this is the PvP Crimson Combatant gear. The reason why this is so good is that firstly, it's super easy to get. Right now, you can just buy the patterns off the auction house. These are server-side items, the patterns and the final product, so the price you gotta pay will depend on your server, but on my medium pop server, I can pick up some recipes for like less than 500 gold a piece, and it's definitely worth the investment. After you buy these recipes, you just learn them, and then all you want to do is just produce the quality 5 items and then sell it directly to the auction house. This is great because, of course, first of all, this is PvP gear, so anybody stepping into the PvP kind of market, they're going to want some basic gear, and secondly, it has a decent normal item level, so people who don't even PvP still pick up this gear just for a general eye level boost. I will make sure to include some profits on screen as well as some sales. Also, as a side note to anybody who's more of a veteran gold maker but just new to the Dragonflight scene, I can comfortably restock this with TSM, meaning it's super fast and there's a lot of gold available. Moving on, we have tailoring, which is probably one of my favorite beginner professions for Dragonflight. Not only do we have that PvP gear that we just talked about, but we have, I'll give you guys a few seconds to guess, and we have bags. Now there's 2 types of gold makers that can make this a little bit more profitable, so let's break this down. Firstly, we have the new player gold makers. So you just started playing the game, you think gold making is interesting, you haven't done much in the game yet, you're super new, and this is where you're really going to want to focus on just the basic bags. There's a basic simple reagent bag and then the wilder cloth bag, which at first glance is pretty cheap on the auction house, but it's also very cheap to craft. So these bags might only sell for 50 gold on your server, but you're also crafting it for 9. So it's very, small amounts of gold, but it's great if you're just starting out. Now, if you are the second gold maker, which is you are a veteran player, meaning you've played a lot of Dragonflight, but maybe you focused on PvP or the raiding scene, and you just wanted to start gold making, then you likely will have some renown. Of course, this applies, if you're a new player and you also have renown, but if you have the renown required for the high level bags, which is the Chronocloth reagent bag, as well as the Azure Weave normal bag, these are super profitable. Generally, they cost about, 600 to 900 gold to produce, and I can easily sell these for anywhere between 3,000 to 10,000 gold a piece. Keep in mind, that's just my server, prices will vary, but these bags are amazing. The thing about bags is that they are bought in bulk because people either need to fill out their inventory, or they need to fill out their bank, or they need to fill out both. So many people buy multiple bags at once. So yes, it might not seem like a lot of gold just by a single item, but generally people are buying 4 to 11 at a time. Up next, we have Enchanting. Now, Enchanting is a little bit weird on this list because generally I'm trying to highlight items that don't really require any sort of knowledge points, or if they do, it requires very little, and Enchanting is a little bit difficult to recommend. I love Enchanting because once you have it leveled up at least a little bit, there's a lot of profit to be made, and generally enchants are fast sellers, but it's a little bit harder to get there, especially when you're just starting out. So as a blanket statement, if there's any sort of enchant that is profitable for you, depending on your stats, skill, etc., I recommend crafting it, but if you're looking for a little bit more of a beginner route and you happen to have Enchanting, I recommend the Disenchant Shuffle. I have a video covering this, but basically if you have a tailor, so you do need a tailor on top of an enchanter, you can craft bracers, disenchant them, and make some extra gold. So that's kind of what I would recommend as some starter gold as you slowly level up your knowledge points and profession to make enchants. It's a little bit weird, but still there's some pretty good profit to be made. Up next, we have probably my favorite item on this list. I know I keep saying that all of these are good, but if you only would listen to one of these recommendations, this would be the one. And this is for engineers, and this is the Soul Inhaler. Ever since literally day 1 of Dragonflight, I've been recommending this item, and to this day, we are months into the expansion, and it is still making plenty of profit. Now, the one scary thing, at least it looks scary on paper, is that you need 25 knowledge points in order to unlock this item. but if you actually start leveling up your engineer, 25 knowledge points you can get in about 30 minutes. So day 1, pick up engineering, and you're good to go. I will have the route on screen. Basically, you need to put 5 knowledge points into the top trait, so then you can unlock scrapping, and then you put the 20 more in there, and you have this recipe. The great thing about it is that there's no quality. It is non-stackable, so it's going to be server-side, so prices will vary, but this right here is probably one of my best-selling items of the whole expansion. So if you'll only listen to one recommendation, get the Soul Inhaler. Up next, we have Blacksmithing, and this is where kind of the consistent rule that I talked about at the start comes into play. Generally, what happens whenever somebody says, "Hey Penguin, I just picked up Blacksmithing," I generally recommend Expedition Shovels. It requires a few bits of renown inside the Dragon Scale Expedition, but most people will have it, and generally this is a great item. However, it does require Servite ore, and currently at the state of 10.0.7, Servite ore is a little bit inflated due to all the Jewelcrafting stuff going on. Because of that, currently on my server, also granted that somebody crashed shovel prices like crazy, it is actually unprofitable. However, I'm gonna keep checking back, and as soon as it becomes profitable again, I'm definitely going to continue selling. So the reason why I include this is that in general, it's a very fast selling item. I highly recommend it, but it's going to come down to your server price, and it might be a little bit more on the unprofitable side just because of the inflation of ore prices. But I expect that to eventually go down, but I highly recommend this item if you have the renown. Besides that, this is kind of just a reminder. Remember, PvP gear exists, but specifically for blacksmithing, you also have basic weapons. On top of all of the PvP gear, every single armor profession also has basic blue gear, which I do recommend. I'm just not going to highlight it specifically, but blacksmithing also has weapons on top of that blue gear. So I highly recommend those weapons because if a person needs just a basic weapon for item level, they're getting it from a blacksmith, and generally there's some pretty decent profit. Up next, we have Jewelcrafting, and we are almost done through this list, but with Jewelcrafting, we have some time-sensitive markets. Just because we are still a little bit early into 10.0.7, the rush is a little bit over, but there is unstable elementium. I already have a video covering this specific item, which I will have linked down below, but basically you just need to take your Jewelcrafter to kill a rare, then you get this item. Now, the downside of this item is that it is BOP, so you do have to use the work order system, and just because we are no longer in the initial release phase of this patch, the commission prices for this item have gone down. However, if you happen to be on a smaller server, your commission prices may be a little bit higher, and you may be able to make some pretty good gold. Also, if you're on a fuller pop server, the commissions might be very cheap, but you might be able to get a lot of them to make up for it. Either way, I think it's worth mentioning. I highly recommend checking out my other video to see more about it, but I just wanted to mention it here. In terms of other items, I also want to highlight the empty soul cage, which actually pairs with the inhalers that I mentioned earlier. Basically, the reason why people need inhalers is because it's used to get different souls, and they have to use soul cages with the inhaler to actually trap those souls. So somebody might buy one inhaler, but they buy 20 cages to go with it. Similar to the engineering one as well, this is about a 15 knowledge point commitment, so even cheaper, and you just need to invest it all into enterprising. Now, I will say this item fluctuates a lot, and I will just quickly highlight that multicraft is pretty important here. Definitely make sure you have a multicraft tool, but with the rise of prices right now, with 10.0.7, this item is super valuable. Soul cages used to be as low as 20 gold a piece, and ever since 10.0.7, they've raised to over 50. Then the third to last point that I have is leatherworking, and this is very similar to blacksmithing. In general, like any other armored profession, I recommend PvP gear, I recommend the blue gear, and also specifically for leatherworking, the floral basket profession tool is generally pretty good. In general, every single armor profession that has profession tools, some of them are stupidly cheap at like 5 gold a piece, while some of them are actually pretty profitable. This still applies to blacksmithing, tailoring, etc. However, out of all profession tools, I feel like the floral basket is actually probably one of the best selling and also has a pretty great profit margin, at least on my server. So feel free to check all of them. I recommend being curious and checking all of them, but definitely look out for the floral basket because generally I can sell it for a few thousand gold. Then, okay, this is where we have to kind of switch because I have slightly bad news depending on how you take it. The second to last profession that we have is Inscription, and this is a pretty tricky one. In terms of super easy, remember everything I've covered in this video requires barely any knowledge points, most of them require none at all, some of them required a little bit of reputation, but besides that, they're very easy to achieve. And besides the PvP gear that I mentioned at the start, Inscription really doesn't have anything. Technically, you do have a handful of profession tools, you have the PvP trinkets, but outside of that, everything requires a pretty good knowledge point investment. Now, with that being said, I still recommend Inscription as one of my favorite professions, but you definitely need to work on it, so it's not going to be a profession I would say you want to pick up right away without any sort of other professions to help you jumpstart your gold. I don't mean to constantly send you guys to other videos, but I do have a recommended build video that covers Inscription, so if you want an idea on like where to go to jumpstart, I recommend checking out that video. That applies to all professions, but missives do really well, but it's about a 100 point commitment. So it's one of those things I can't just easily put on this list, but Inscription is generally pretty good once you get some points into it. Then lastly, good old Alchemy, or should I say sad Alchemy, as it's probably the roughest profession right now. The only thing I could recommend are transmutes, which transmutes are a daily thing, so it's not going to even make you a ton of gold, especially if it's your only profession, but technically you can invest in transmutes if you want to make a little bit of gold. Besides that, you really need to max out the profession, and even when maxed out, profits are slim. Alchemy is just not doing the best right now. Of course, there may be other reasons why you want to pick it up, due to potion duration buffs, etc., but I would advise against Alchemy as your first profession, because it will probably get you pretty discouraged. And yeah guys, that is it for all of my recommendations. Now, of course, I just have to say it, it wouldn't be a penguin video without me saying it, but on top of all of these recommendations, get cooking. The video that was uploaded prior to this one is why cooking is still the best beginner profession, and I live by that statement. So once again, I'm sorry for all of the shoutouts, but I will have that video linked as well because I truly live by it. Cooking is one of the easiest professions to pick up. It's a secondary profession, meaning it won't take up space, and it's just great. But I hope this video was helpful. I hope at least one item is profitable for you. And remember, be consistent, be persistent, and of course, have fun, everybody. Thank you guys so much for watching, and as always, have a good day.